When my daughter Cynthia ran into the house, screaming about something in our shed, I went to investigate and called my husband immediately for help. What I discovered hiding inside changed our lives forever, leading us down a path filled with shocking revelations and unexpected new bonds. I left work in a hurry, eager to pick up Cynthia from Linda's place. Linda had been our nanny ever since Cynthia was a baby. She couldn't have children of her own, so she poured all her love into caring for Cynthia. When I arrived, Linda was playing chess with Cynthia, delighting in her skillful gameplay. "Hi, Clara," Linda greeted me with a warm smile. "Cynthia's been a delight, as always." "Thanks, Linda. Ready to go home, sweetheart?" I asked Cynthia. "Yeah, Mommy," Cynthia chirped, grabbing her sling bag. As we walked home, Cynthia chattered about her day at school. Once we arrived, I set her to play outside while I started making dinner. I was chopping vegetables when I heard a piercing scream. Cynthia burst through the kitchen door, eyes wide with terror. "Mommy, there's something in the shed." I dropped the knife and crouched down to her level. "What did you see, honey?" I don't know. Something moved in there. I glanced outside, then back at Cynthia. "Stay here," I instructed firmly. I grabbed my phone and headed to the shed, my heart pounding. The shed was old and creaky. I opened the door slowly, peering into the dim light. The air smelled musty, like old wood and dirt. As I stepped inside, I noticed the cellar hatch closing. My first reaction was that it must be a burglar intent on stealing the garden tools and whatever else we had stored in there. "Hello?" I called out. "Who's there?" No answer. I strained to hear any sounds, but there was only silence. My mind whirled with possibilities. I quickly locked the shed door from the outside and ran back to the house. I dialed my husband, James, who was away on a business trip. He picked up immediately. "Clara? What's wrong?" "I think Terry's someone robbing our shed, James. They ducked down into the cellar when I went in to investigate." I locked the door to the shed. "What should I do now?" "Clara, call the cops right away. Don't go near there. Be careful. You'll catch the next flight home, but call me back as soon as the police get there." I hung up and dialed 911. "Hello, I think someone has broken into my garden shed at 122 Vine. I need a patrol car to come immediately." The operator assured me help was on the way. I turned to Cynthia, who was clinging to my leg. "It's okay, sweetie. The police are coming." Minutes later, 2 officers arrived. I led them to the shed and unlocked the door. They entered cautiously, flashlights sweeping the darkness. One of them lifted the cellar hatch and shone her light down. Minutes later, 2 officers arrived. I led them to the shed and unlocked the door. They entered cautiously, flashlights sweeping the darkness. "Mom, please stay back. We need to check this out," one officer said, his hand hovering over his holster. "If it's a burglar, they might be armed and dangerous." They moved towards the cellar hatch, one of them lifting it slowly. "Ready?" he asked his partner. "Ready," she replied, her flashlight steady. The beam of light cut through the darkness, and the officer froze. "Wait, they're just kids," she said, her voice full of surprise. "It's okay, kids. We're here to help you." 2 boys, no older than 12, emerged. They were dirty and thin, their eyes wide with fear. I noticed makeshift beds and empty cans of beans in the cellar. They had been living there, surviving on what little they could find. "Please don't send us back," one of them pleaded. "We can't go back to that place." The officer knelt down. "What are your names?" "Joe," the boy replied. "And this is my twin brother, Stan." Looking at the two boys, my heart ached. "Why were you hiding in our shed?" Joe looked at Stan before speaking. "We ran away from the home. The people there are mean to us." I looked at the officers. "What will happen to them now?" "Well, take them to the station," one said. "We need to contact this home and get them checked out." "Can I come with them?" I asked. The officer hesitated, then nodded. "All right, but we need to get them to the hospital first." I turned to the boys. "I'll stay with you, okay?" Joe nodded, tears brimming in his eyes. "Thank you." As we walked to the police car, Cynthia tugged at my sleeve. "Mommy, can they stay with us?" I looked at the officers. "Is that possible?" "Well, see," one replied. "For now, let's get them the help they need." At the hospital, the boys were checked by doctors. They were malnourished but otherwise fine. I stayed with them, sitting in the waiting room and holding their hands. The police found the so-called home the boys described, but I couldn't shake the feeling that sending them back there was a bad idea. The next day, I took Cynthia to school and then drove to the home. The building was cold and unwelcoming. The director, Adam, greeted me with a forced smile. "Mrs. Thompson, I understand you found 2 of our wards," he said. "Yes, Joe and Stan. They said they ran away because of mistreatment." His smile faltered. "They're troubled boys. They don't adjust well." "Is that so?" I replied. "I'd like to see where they've been living." He hesitated, then led me through dimly lit hallways. The rooms were crowded with unmade beds and the place had a generally depressed air about it. I felt a surge of anger. Back at home, I discussed everything with Linda and her husband, Peter. "Those boys can't stay there," I said. "We have to do something." Linda nodded, her eyes teary. "Peter and I have been talking. We want to foster them. But we don't have much. Whatever you need, we'll help, I promise." The next few weeks were a blur of paperwork and meetings. We faced resistance from Adam, who insisted the boys were better off at the home. But we were determined. Cynthia and I visited Joe and Stan regularly, bringing them homemade meals and spending time with them. One evening, while we were there, I overheard Adam arguing with a social worker. "We're under investigation, but those kids are lying." I pulled the social worker aside. "What's happening?" She sighed. "We've had reports of neglect. We're trying to find new homes for all the children here." Then, Joe was admitted to the hospital with pneumonia. This was the last straw. I contacted a lawyer and threatened Adam with legal action and media exposure. As the investigation continued, more about the sinister operations of the home came to light. Adam and his wife, Julia, ran the place as an income generation scheme. They fostered as many children as they could, claiming government grants, but kept most of the money for themselves. I confronted Adam and Julia one last time. "How could you do this to these kids?" Julia sneered. "They're just orphans. No one cares." "Well, I care. And I'll make sure everyone knows what you've done." With the help of the lawyer and the social worker, we ensured Joe and Stan were removed from that awful place. The news of the home's neglect spread, and other children were rescued and placed in better care. Linda and Peter finally welcomed Joe and Stan into their home. They were safe, loved, and starting to heal. I continued to support them, knowing this was just the beginning of a new chapter for all of us. My in-laws told my kids to sleep in a shed. Their reason shocked me. But karma soon intervened. My father abandoned me as a child and I took revenge on him. Kid screams every time he sees old family photo until mom looks at it closer. One evening, I visited Linda and Peter's house. The boys were settling in nicely, their faces brighter and more hopeful. Cynthia, Joe, and Stan were playing together in the living room. At dinner, we all sat around the table, sharing stories and laughter. As we ate, I noticed Joe pushing his food around on his plate, a small grin forming on his face. "Everything okay, Joe?" I asked. He looked up, his eyes twinkling with mischief. "I was just wondering. Do you have any more of those canned beans? You know, the ones from the shed?" We all laughed, the tension easing from the room. It was the first time I'd seen him joke about their ordeal. "I think we can find something a little better than canned beans," Peter said, chuckling. Joe nodded, his grin widening. "Just checking." After dinner, we gathered in the living room. I looked at Joe and Stan, their faces glowing with the warmth of family. "You have a family now," I told them. "A real family who loves you and will take care of you." Joe's eyes filled with tears. "Thank you, Clara. For everything. No need to thank me. Just be happy and safe," I replied, my heart swelling with emotion. As I watched them interact, I felt a sense of peace. These boys had been through so much, but they were resilient. With the love and support of Linda, Peter, and all of us, they had a chance to build a better future. What would you have done? If you enjoyed this story, here's another one for you about rich parents who stole millions from their daughter's inheritance, but karma taught them a lesson. This work is inspired by real events and people, but it has been fictionalized for creative purposes. Names, characters, and details have been changed to protect privacy and enhance the narrative. Any resemblance to actual persons, living or dead, or actual events is purely coincidental and not intended by the author. The author and publisher make no claims to the accuracy of events or the portrayal of characters and are not liable for any misinterpretation. This story is provided as is, and any opinions expressed are those of the characters and do not reflect the views of the author or publisher.